Step into the chilling past, where the wheels of a gray bus rolled in, signaling the fate of the most vulnerable and mentally unwell. Witness the birth of Nazi Germany, a time when the darkest forces gained the power of law, shaping society in ways unimaginable. Today, we delve deep into the haunting shadows of Nazi rule, exposing the insidious transformation of unimaginable horrors into a twisted, new normal. Brace yourself as we explore the ruthless Gestapo, the sinister Lebensborn breeding system, the hateful anti-Semitic laws, and the cold-hearted euthanasia program that stripped away all traces of humanity. Prepare to be shocked, disturbed, and enlightened as we shed light on the darkest corners of human history. Welcome to History on Fleek. This is an episode that will leave an indelible mark on your understanding of the past. We begin with the Surveillance Society. How governments watch and keep tabs on their populations is an anxiety and fear felt by many across the globe in modern society. Turns out, the Nazis had it down pat about 90 years ago. Created in 1933, the Gestapo was the brainchild of Hermann Göring, melding many, then Prussian police forces into one. The Gestapo was a secret police force. Well, not that secret. Everyone knew the name and everyone knew to fear them. This secret police force was not only active in Germany, but across all of Europe the Nazis came to occupy. Their atrocities were felt far and wide. In action, the Gestapo as a secret police force was an arm against anything the Nazis saw as undesirable. Anyone who expressed dissent against the Nazi regime, be it trade unions or members of the clergy and other faiths, was under the watchful eye of the Gestapo. Most chillingly, the Gestapo was weaponized to survey and prosecute the Jewish, Roma, Sinti, homosexual, and handicapped populations. This was Nazi ideology in official state clothing, all under the false premise of secrecy. Arrest by the Gestapo was a mockery of law, with no judicial process following and brutal interrogation being par for the course. Most infamously seen in the Night and Fog Decree of 1941, many people would disappear, never to be seen again under Gestapo custody. Make no mistake, cold, clinical murder was a tentpole of Gestapo operations, and they were a major operator in the Nazis' conducting of the Holocaust. So what was normal about this, you say? Tragically, it's come to be understood the Gestapo was not a huge operation with an army of members and a sprawling clandestine surveillance network. The Gestapo became shockingly effective thanks to everyday people's readiness to report their fellow citizens to the Gestapo. This brutal secret police terror became normal because, in the name of protecting the regime, people made it normal. Yet it wasn't only surveillance the Nazis infected to bring a new immoral normal to everyday life. They also went after the most precious duty on earth. Bringing children into the world is one of life's purest joys. Child care and the rearing of children are considered one of the most vital aspects of a healthy state, till you see what the Nazis did with it. Founded in 1935, the Lebensborn Registered Association was a sickening split of responding to Germany's falling birth rates and promoting racial purity. Sponsored by the state and initiated by the SS, the Lebensborn took childbirth, child-rearing, and turned it into a eugenics program. The aim was to produce Aryan children the Nazis considered racially pure. At its start, the program supported the wives of SS officers, providing them with maternity homes and the best child care possible. Yet it would expand to the support of unmarried mothers, usually socially ostracized, allowing them to birth children in anonymity at state-sponsored maternity homes. Lebensborn, however, would go well beyond selective welfare in the name of disturbing Aryanism. As for how this became, look no further than the Cross of Honor of the German Mother, a civil state decoration given by the Reich for the women who showed the most exemplary motherhood, honoring the nation. In truth, it was for the women who birthed the most Aryan children. The birth of Aryan children was a specialized Nazi project concerning whom they wished to consider their own. At the same time, they make ghastly efforts to attack any they wish to consider otherwise. Anti-Semitism is a tragic strand of the entire history of Europe. The Jewish people have long been persecuted and blamed for social and economic upheaval across the continent for centuries, dating back to the 11th century. Nowhere at any point in time made this hatred more normalized than Nazi Germany. The ascendance of the Nazi Party in the Weimar Republic was hugely influenced by virulent anti-Semitism. Germany's economic, social, and political downturn across the interwar period was as much caused by the Treaty of Versailles as anything else. The Nazi Party would cast a racist narrative, claiming the presence of Jewish people in Germany was to blame, often using archaic and religious imagery. Once in power, this narrative didn't stop but was furthered, where it was entirely normalized. Was this narrative's enforcement in the law? From 1933 to 1939, the Nazis passed laws incrementally stripping away the rights and civil status of Jewish people in front of the public, conditioned to fear and distrust them. The laws of 1933 stripped German Jews of healthcare and providing civil service professions, healthcare, school attendance, and full citizenship rights. 1935 would bring the Nuremberg Laws, banning any Jewish person from marrying a non-Jewish German, stripped every possible citizenship right, and stoked violence and arrests of Jews to come. What would become known as the Night of Broken Glass from all the shattered windows lining the streets unfolded on November 9th and 10th, 1938. The destruction of Jewish homes, businesses, and synagogues was instigated by Nazi officials, SA, and Hitler Youth. For the first time, mass arrests of German Jews took place for no other reason than their identity. Some 30,000 Jewish men were rounded up to be taken to concentration camps. Gallingly after what was a violent pogrom causing international outrage, Himmler would declare Kristallnacht, caused by German Jews, fining them 1 billion Reichmarks. More anti-Semitic laws would follow. German Jews who could fled the country, and Nazi Germany was on rails to commit a genocide history would never be able to forget. How does factory killing become normal? Through lies, through archaic stereotypes and conspiracies, through hate, by making this all normal through the passage of the law. Nazi Germany's treatment of the adult population was a terrifying force to behold, from its steady indoctrination of the general public to its persecution of minorities. Yet its treatment of youth was no less disturbing. The Hitler Youth would start in 1922 before the Nazi Party rose to power. At the time, across interwar Germany, there were many youth movements, like many today, entirely innocuous to keep the youngest people guided and stimulated. Though once Hitler became chancellor in 1933, what had started 10 years previous with a meager membership of 1,200 simply exploded into a membership of 2,300,000, consisting of boys aged 14 to 18. The Hitler Youth were indoctrinated in all matters Third Reich, from singing Nazi songs and reading Nazi books to myths of Aryan supremacy and the persecution of the Jewish people. Incredibly, the burgeoning Hitler Youth was weaponized against other youth groups across the country. Harassing churches to stop church youth groups and Bible studies became normality until 1936. As by 1936, the Hitler Youth was the only youth organization left in the country. Initially, the Hitler Youth remodeled the Boy Scouts with its emphasis on hiking and camping, then expanded over time to include weapons and combat training. Though, how normal was this, you may be thinking? By 1940, the membership reached 8 million, the overwhelming majority of German youth, and according to historians, the Hitler Youth was the most successful mass movement the Third Reich ever assembled. Yet altering normal doesn't only rely on mass movements. It requires a covert invasion of institutes and their functions. Look no further than the Nazis' treatment of the medical industry. The medical taking of human life is a giant moral and ethical premise that has repeatedly challenged today's society, nation for nation, not the Nazis. They weaponized it for ideological means. Involuntary euthanasia was adopted across Nazi Germany as means of mass murder. Appallingly, those selected for this grim campaign were those confined to psychiatric hospitals, the mentally unwell. So devoid of any humanity was this decision, it created the largest protest ever to be seen against the Third Reich by the domestic population in 1941, named Action T4. German physicians were deemed with the task of declaring who was incurably sick and selecting them for a mercy death. Starting in September 1939 until 1945, Action T4 would take the lives of 275,000 to 300,000 people across psychiatric hospitals in Austria, Poland, the Czech Republic, and Germany. While there can be no reason on earth to justify any of this, the Nazi racial hygiene ideology was behind it among, perhaps more depressingly, money saving by the state. Action T4 was not confined only to adults. In 1939, Hitler would create the Reich Committee for the scientific registering of serious hereditary and congenital illnesses. Considering the protests this gathered, I'm sure you're considering just how normal any of this could be. Welcome to the deceit. The chosen patients were collected by SS guards in white medical uniforms and loaded into what were called charitable ambulance buses. Just the state doing its duty, just for an assessment. Nothing out of the normal. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.